and welcome to the ATE 2023. And thank you for joining on this fun art stream with Élodie Robillard, aka Doodledly. My name is Marie-Ève Lasselle, or Mel, or Harmony Wizard, or Z Birdbrain, and I am a senior solution specialist at Toon, and I also host these streams once in a while because it's really fun. And it allows us to, get the pulse of everyone in the industry and everybody who uses our software. And today, Élodie will speak about, her art, the way she uses Harmony, and a little bit of rigging here and there, and while working in Harmony on this lovely rig, and maybe doodling a few things if we feel like it. So. How are you doing today, Élodie?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us today. For context, me and Élodie go way back. We studied together in Montreal in the Cégep du Vieux-Montréal Animation School. And we've been working here and there in the industry ever since.
Yeah, we work together on a couple of fun projects.
Yeah, funny how you went from being one of my besties in school and then you became my boss.
I mean, supervisor. I wasn't quite the boss.
Right.
You ended up being my interviewer. So,
Sorry, what?
You end up being my interviewer.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Well, that's the industry, right? That's the animation industry. It's small, it's weird, and things change very fast.
And people are nice. We stick together.
Yes. So, what do you generally do? Like, what's your thing? Do you like to draw? Do you like to rig? Do you like to animate?
I mean, unsurprisingly, I got into animation because, behold, I like to draw.
Oh, no way, impossible.
So basically, like you were saying, I started my animation, I guess, journey at the Cégep du Vieux-Montréal in Montreal, in Canada, studying animation, 2D animation in, I guess, the equivalent of a college. And then that's where we met. And ever since I graduated in 2014, I've done a bit of design for indie video game. I've done cutout animating mostly. And I kind of fell into the rigging potion somewhere along the way. And now I'm really into rigging. I really like it. I find it very fascinating and a very interesting part of the cutout animation process. So I've been doing a rigging professionally, I'd say more exclusively rigging since 2018.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was 18.
I still, I still draw on the side.
But that's the great thing, and I think we both agree on this. Like, we like to do rigging as a job because when we're done with the job, we can go home and draw. And we do
exactly.
Want to draw.
Exactly. That's kind of one of the reasons I fell in love with it. Was because even though I love animating, it's super fun. I animated on a couple projects with you. I think most notoriously Wakfu was one of the projects we animated together. And while animating on that show was super fun, like the characters are great, and I learned tons about, surprisingly, anatomy just by osmosis, like seeing.
Yeah, we had to. We had no choice.
Drawing great.
I said we had to learn and be good at anatomy because that was the whole show. Like so, we had to. But
the show was still partly puppets, so like you were basically manipulating very nicely drawn character. So I feel like just by osmosis, just by like manipulating and seeing it in my face all the time, I learned a lot from that show.
This is very interesting because it brings a point that we were going to talk about anyway. But like, when you work in the industry, the projects you work on will forever like influence the way you are as well. Like, I couldn't draw perspective or backgrounds to save my life in the past. And then I became a 3D animator for like three or 4 years. and just seeing the 3D interface daily transformed my eyes, and now I can kind of do it a bit better, like just to draw 3D shapes because I've been around them so much. And it's the same for that show we worked on, but that was very anatomically inclined. like they were a bit more strict about it, but it like not even with practicing like mindfully with it. It's just being part of it made us better at this, and
Yeah.
that's so cool. When you look at an artist, you can kind of, if you find out the shows they work on, you can usually see it kind of tint their style in a good way. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, you see the opposite sometimes too, especially with people who's been there in a long while. You can see. I guess it's more true with maybe designer, because those are the people you tend to more obviously see on a show.
Right.
But sometimes you can like kind of trace back where they worked because you recognize their art style on different
Oh, you're right.
project.
You're right. Yeah.
But yeah.
So interesting. And on top of doing all that digital shebang, like rigging and animation and stuff, when we were studying in school, we were doing animation on paper.
Oh yeah, I think we were some of the last people.
Yeah, some of the last
one
when we did the whole thing in paper.
Yeah.
But hey, Harmony was not what it was back then. It was Harmony 9. So, Harmony.
I mean,
today
there
is
were
way
already
better than what it was
deformer. I
before.
remember using some deformer. I think it's one of the things that really attracted me with rigging on Harmony.
Right?
Was the way it was the curve deformer, basically. The way you could just, I've got one on the
bend
bird.
something.
Yeah, you can just put something on a piece and then bend it, and it looks good. You can just move it around, and now you've got even more deformer. You've got the what's it called already?
The
I'm just
freeform?
gonna select it and remember the name.
Freeform.
The freeform deformer, thanks. Like the freeform can do some really cool things.
Yes.
I've got it with my wings open a bit further. Freeform. Okay, no, that's too much deformer. just gonna get the wings. But yeah, you can really like deform in a very natural way and get like more of a, I don't want to say end round because it's still different than end round, but you really get like the flow and the feel of something that's not.
Well, it's less rigid
robotic.
than Flash, where you can just like move a symbol and that's it. You can't like bend it, so it's a bit more organic. And
I
less
did
rigid.
miss Harmony when I was working on Flash.
Didn't we every day on Wakfu?
Yeah.
But but that's the great thing with Harmony. It's so easy to be a bit more fluid and less rigid into the movement, which is, I think, usually what sets the cutout animation apart from other pipelines. And but it does come with a certain downfall that if you can't manipulate shapes with that much precision, you kind of need to know how to draw, because it's easy to take the rig and make it look not great compared to 3D animation, when usually you have if in 3D animation you have a puppet, like you can't really take the hand and mess it up that bad usually, like, unless you really try. But in cutout animation, what a lot of people don't understand at first is that, yes, it's puppets, but there's a lot of hand-drawn skill sets that goes into it. Like hands needs to be redrawn. Lip sync is usually a lot of redraw. The poses, you can't just take a puppet and give it the shape. You have to kind of plan ahead a bit more in cutout and rigging, which is oftentimes where people kind of struggle a little bit. So people don't go into cutout animation thinking you're never going to have to draw again, because it's not true. Same goes for rigging.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess it always depends on which production, especially like I don't want to undermine your example, because that's true, I'd say, in most occasion. Well,
unless you do like something that is very preschool and it's like the characters are like 3 triangles in a circle, But the minute you have a bit more detailed characters, usually you need a bit more drawing skills on these poses.
Yeah. You still use your drawing skill, but I think it's also like with something that's fun with cutout is that if you're more of a person who has a great sense of timing, than maybe just straight up drawing skill. Like I know a lot of great animators who are maybe like, they don't maybe strike you as not super talented. I mean, they're good at drawing. If you ended up in animation, you usually ended up there because you like drawing.
I mean, don't be afraid to take me as an example. I animate way better with rigs than I do with hand drawn, just because I get bored after redrawing the same thing 5 times. Like I like, yeah, don't be afraid. Take me as an example. I know.
Yeah, but I think it's mostly that you can like, I get compartmentalize animation, because animation is a lot about like, it is drawing, but it's also a lot about timing and like acting, and that sometimes some people, they get like stopped in their, I guess, their flow, because I don't know, they get stuck on fingers or something, or like they look at their drawing and the face doesn't look right. But with a solid rig, you have already like everything is about at the right place, so you can really concentrate all your effort into making something that moves right,
Yep.
without having to, I don't know, make sure that the wings looks good. Like,
Yeah, that's personally what I love about cutout and rigging, where like the base is there, then you can just make it better. It's like when you're an animator and you receive a very solid storyboard with nice like poses. Not too many poses, because a storyboard where all the animation is done for you is more harmful than anything else. But a few good key poses is gonna take an animator places. Like, I just want to do timing. I don't want to do crazy poses.
Yeah. I mean, I have to trust you on that, because I think the only hand-drawn project I've ever done was my student short film.
Yeah, but it looks
It's not
pretty
true.
great.
I guess Waku was a bit hand-drawn in a way. We had some scenes that were more redrawing heavy, I'll say, than others.
And we were also speaking about, doing rigging or more technical jobs during work hours, in studios. And, rigging is like puzzle solving. It is fun. But then what is your preferred thing to do in terms of art when you're not rigging? Because I think I know you do cool watercolors.
Yeah, I do watercolor. I really love watercolor. I think it might be because it's not on computer.
Right? You don't have Control Z. You have to just deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. What I like about watercolor is that it's not even like, yeah, of course it looks good. Like, watercolor as a medium has a really nice, I want to say rendering, but like it has a nice finish that, looks appealing. But it's also the fact that like, whenever I paint, if I do a mistake or if I take a decision, I need to stick with it. And that allows me to work a bit more freely, because I'm not constantly like, oh, maybe I could change that, or maybe I could rework that. Like, once it's done, it's done. So it really allowed me to like just express something on paper, and then, at the end, just be done with it and start another drawing, and not be stuck redoing the same drawing over and over again.
And I think that's a nice lesson to give to anyone who's listening today. Like, I'm a firm believer that any artist that works digitally, for the most part, I think every artist should have a medium, like find something that you can do that is not on a computer. And I know that usually the argument against it is that, oh, it makes me so anxious because I can't Control Z, like I can't edit it. But I'm like, that's the point. It's going to make you anxious at first, but then if you learn to kind of let go and just embrace creating for the sake of creating, I'm a firm believer that in the long run, it's very beneficial for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If not for your mental health, also for like just your general arm health.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, I know when I'm holding a stylus in general, I tend to press much more strongly on my tablet than I would with a paintbrush.
While you're in this subject, it is one of the questions I was about to ask. Is there a specific way you hold your stylus when you draw or when you work, and does it change depending on the job and style? And does it influence how you draw, or did you never notice?
I mean, I've got a pretty basic. I've been told by my ergotherapist that I've got like the optimal way to hold the pencil, which is the
Amazing.
like the three finger grip. So I basically like pinch my stylus and my brush and my pencil with my thumbs and my index. Wait, you know what? I'm just
Draw
straight up
it,
going to
draw
draw
it,
it.
draw it.
Yeah. So basically, I've got my stylus right here.
Okay, right-handed or left-handed? I forgot. I think you're the opposite of me, right?
Yeah, I'm right-handed. I'm.
That's how we would buck elbows when we were tabling together.
That's no,
That's
that's the
probably
opposite. You
fun.
need to be in a corner. So yeah, I've got my two finger there, and then I've got my other finger and my pinky resting on
We
the
hold it
table
the
to like
same.
stabilize it. Yeah. I've been told that's like the optimal way to hold a pencil, because you don't just put all the strain on one finger, which would be your either your middle finger or your index. But that's pretty much how I hold all my pencil. I think the real difference will be the grip, because when I'm holding the stylus, I tend to press very hard, because you can have like a great range where you draw on a tablet. Like I'll give myself a big brush, so like you'll have very small thing and really thick brush
That's a
strokes.
pencil, though. That's not a brush.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna take a proper brush. You know
Well,
what I
just because
mean.
the pressure is more loyal on a brush. That's what I
Oh
say.
yeah. Oh, you're right. It is. Huh. I mostly use the pencil and the node view. I'm not used to drawing in Harmony that much.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, I guess I'll need to give a brush more of a try. Because a pencil, you can like edit it so much. Like in a
Yeah,
rig,
pencil
I
is the
tend to do
best.
all my lines with pencil. I barely even
Mm-hmm.
use the pencil. What I would use is just the line and then drag and
Yeah,
drop
the
it
line
and
tool.
curve it. Wait, I think I have. Do I have my rough still? Yeah, I still have the rough somewhere
Anyway,
here.
when it comes to rigs, like 99% of the time, people should just do it in pencil because you never know when that bird is going to be zoomed in or zoomed out. And you don't want
Yeah,
to have to redo the whole rig because you can't change your line weight. So if you're listening to this, people, if you're rigging, use the pencil tool, not the brush tool.
yeah. Because like it's a super good example. Like I know there is a way to link your nodes to change it through time, but I didn't research into it before it, so I'm not going to try it. But
I'll
a
show you
very easy
later.
way to do it, if you know you're going to have it change for the whole scene, like for example here, if I want my line to be, I don't know, thinner on everything, I can just select everything. Yeah, now my puppet is all the way there. And then just change my line right there in my tool property. I don't know, I want to put it to a tree. And
So
that's it.
pretty.
Now it's all the way clean all the way. Oh, I want to keep the thick lines.
Very, very interesting. Um,
You can change like the texture and everything. Like if I didn't like my texture for whatever reason, you can change the texture there. You can do a bunch of things using a pencil line. So that's usually
yeah,
the
by
one
the way, the
I
one we
go
use for that
with.
project is usually rough. Just so you know. For all the other rigs in that gang, we used rough line. Just so you know.
Oh yeah, I'll keep that in mind because that it's funny to talk about it because that's one of the project I wanted to talk about because we're
Yeah,
actually
we'll
rigging
get there.
our D&D character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. So we already talked about the path, but oh yeah, okay. So, um, I forgot to ask, where are you from? and and do you think it influenced your art style or animation art style?
I
Right, that's
mean,
a question we've been asking some people lately. Cause I don't know. It's interesting. Do you think the place you come from influenced your art style?
Hmm. I mean, probably. I think it's mostly what influenced my art style are the shows and the books I used to watch when I was younger. I mean,
Oh, you're right. Like kids' books, usually they're pretty unique to where people are born because they're not
yeah,
always translated to other countries.
yeah. And I mean, I say kids' book, but a lot of my young adults slash teenagers, the thing I was watching. I mean, if you look at my general art style, even though I lean more and more toward, I guess, semi-realism, uh, you can see the manga influence. Like, I grew up with Quadcopter Sakura. I grew up with
Mm-hmm.
Beyblade. I grew up with, what is it? Spider Rider.
Oh my god, I remember that show.
Digata, the Fencer. And like, that manga, uh, that anime art style, I think you can still see it in my work, and how much it influenced me. Um,
Yeah, I can
and I
believe
think
that.
also like my love for Amos d'Aragon might have influenced
Mm.
the way I love fantasy so much, but like medieval fantasy, and I guess D&D today.
Oh yeah.
For people that are not in Quebec, Amos d'Aragon is like it's basically like a fantasy
I
adventure
think it's
book
one
for
of the
like
biggest, or like
teenagers.
one of the first or biggest like fantasy book that we got introduced to as kiddos.
Yeah.
I think it was most people's introduction. It's like, yeah, I think that and Aragon. I think it's the two like things that people would read if they like fantasy and something, and they didn't want
Mhm.
to read Lord of the Ring because we were like 6.
Yeah. We were a bit. Lord of the Ring was a bit too, I guess, heavy for my age range. But Amos Dragon was much more, like I guess you'd say young adult. Not even young adult. It's younger than that. Like teenager.
And speaking of fantasy things, what are you working on at the moment? What is this? What is this magpie for? Hmm?
That
Is it
magpie.
is it
This is
something?
the first draft, I'd say. I mean, I did it especially for that interview, and just so I have something to play around while we talk. Especially since I'm so much more used to cutout animation, I felt like it was more me than just drawing directly on Harmony. But yeah, it's the familiar of my wizard, my D&D wizard, because we're working on a group project to turn all our D&D characters into little rigs so we can do
Animated
little
bits.
animation with them.
Into animated bits, yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's been a very fun project. I think it's been the highlight for me of this year because it's ever since I graduated, I think it's the biggest like personal, like non-work related project I've worked on in the
mm-hmm.
last I mean, since I've graduated, so in the last 8 years.
Oh, don't say it again, please. I'm gonna feel old.
But yeah, it's so
um,
fun because we're working on that on the You're the Bird Brain Shenanigan Discord server
yeah,
with a
yeah.
bunch of Shenanigan member, and everybody gets to pitch in. It's really fun because basically everybody have their own D&D character, right? And everybody have their own specialty, things they like, things they don't like. Like I'm not super big into background. I think you might notice it with my marvelous two-tone background here. But I really like drawing characters. So on that project,
and
I've been.
I think that's a good lesson for anyone like peeking and watching in.
Oh yeah.
Um, like yes, we both have our day jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And we do like either rig or like I teach and I do Toon Boom stuff. But we both know rigging, but that's one important thing. We did not, or barely, if anything, learn rigging in school. And that is something we often hear, like, oh, I'm never going to be a rigger because my school doesn't teach Toon Boom rigging. But I'm like, you know what? Most schools don't really teach that much of rigging because you cannot learn to rig in like one class of a semester or something. So you can learn the basics with a class, that's for sure. But if you want to be a rigger, just like anything else, you're going to need a lot and lot and lots of practice. Because we see it often. People are like, oh, I learned animation and now I want to be a rigger. So I'm going to take, like, I'm just going to do like a 1 day class and then I'll be a rigger. It's like, no, like learning to rig it takes as long as learning how to animate. Like it's an ongoing thing. So for us too, making these projects that we're doing now, like basically we're taking our characters and we're making very short bits, like a couple seconds animation scene that we're going to post online, because it is a doable project. Because we cannot say like, oh, we're gonna make a whole animation series. We are
No, that's
five
a bit
people.
too ambitious. I mean,
Like,
maybe
sorry to break
over
your
the
dreams,
course of like
people,
10
but like
years.
you can't make an animation series with 5 people and keep your sanity, or
No.
or tell me I'm gonna hire you or something. But so like making these small projects for us makes us learn more about rigging or animation or anything. But also we're not doing it alone. Like Élodie said, we are many people gathered together over a commune project. And I think to anyone watching, if you also would like to learn more about like animation and rigging and stuff, doing these small projects is just cool on its own, because there's few better ways to learn to know if you're doing a good rig better than like giving the rig to someone and having that person animated. This is the best feedback you're gonna get, because you might think you do the best rigs until you put that rig into the hand of an animator and they're like, it doesn't work. And then
I
you
think it's something that we tend to like. It's something that I like about rigging, and that's something that's sometimes overlooked, especially in production. How important, like there's thousands of ways to rig. Maybe not thousand, but there's a bunch of different ways to rig.
At least 5.
At least 5. Yeah, at least 5. But even there's so much subtleties, and ultimately it's also something I like about rigging is you're not just rigging for yourself. I mean, right now I'm rigging for myself. I'm doing this 100% for me.
It's a very social job. Like you have to communicate so much with the rest of the team and be open. And
I mean, being in rigging, you usually end up, especially in a supervising role, which I've been doing since 2018. You end up being the bridge between design and storyboard and the animator, because it's at the rigging stage that you'll be able to say, oh, that character design will be hard to animate. Oh, that character design maybe won't be able to do whatever kick, flip, ninja thing you want it to do in the board. So you end it in a situation where you're like the mediator between the animator who wants to have like the simplest thing to animate so they can have fun with their project. They want to be able to have fun and not have to bother with like 1,000 details that are just going to be hindering their flow. And also, the designer and the sometimes realizator who maybe has like something in his mind that he's like, no, it's very important that this character has a mustache. I don't care if you do it like a lip sync takes a lot of time and that you need to like animate the micro expression with it. I want him to have a mustache.
And I mean, that's like choosing your battles, right?
Yeah.
It's the same discussion we always have with the design department. Usually it's like, if a design is too complicated, usually you're like, well, what does that bring to the story? And if the answer is just, it looks cool, usually that's what I'm going to fight against and be like, no, like, I know it looks cool, but if we're going to spend $3 million on that, like, no, like, make it worth it. But a mustache, if the person is like, well, it's because it's part of the character, his story, and that's how he express himself, I'm like, okay, we'll get the mustache in. So it's always a matter of like choosing your battles and knowing what's important and not. And I think that's what makes a wise director, or like super. I think director is the word in English. I think we're both losing our English with these terms. Down.
Yeah. Our first language French is probably showing.
Oh, maybe a good advice for people doing rig, and I think we talked about it before when we were on Glitch Sticks. Oftentimes, when we have rigs, I think we both agree on this. One of the most time-consuming things is if you want to add shadows to the rig, right?
Oh yeah.
And I remember on that show, people wanted to have realistic like shadows everywhere, but that means you have to animate them all the time on every scene,
Mm-hmm.
eh, which is very long. So having
Mm-hmm.
shadows on certain scenes where it's really worth it, I guess, yeah, that makes sense. But if you're gonna have shadows all the time, I think you taught me this when we were like, oh, we're gonna have top down shadows, where it's like imagine you have a light directly on the top of the head of the characters, so that little part of the characters can cast shadows on others, and this goes a long way.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Like rigging is all about being having a healthy level of laziness.
mm-hmm.
Um, because you want to. I mean, it depends where. Like, you don't want to have a lazy rig in which you don't rig everything, and now the animator doesn't have everything it needs to animate.
Yeah.
But it's a lot about what can I reuse from rig to rig. Like, anytime I get on a show, I'll do the main character, and afterward, I never start from scratch ever again.
Oh yeah.
Um, Something I like to do is I have a template
Yes, the
of
rigging
basically
library. I was about to
empty
ask you about that.
nodes.
Good, good,
Yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah. So, like, I'd have, like, for example, if I make a show with birds, and I know all my birds will look like this with, like, open wings and closed wings, and, like, I would take everything that's are in this drawing, delete it, and template it so that when I start a new bird, I'm not starting from scratch. I would be drawing the head directly into the head node. And, like, sure, you're going to have to change stuff. Like, if it's not a magpie and it's a hawk, like, I'm not going to have this little separation there. Maybe I'm going to have more texture on the feather. I'm going to have different shape of feet. It's going to have talons and stuff. If it's an owl, I'll want to have the white come all the way to the feet. But
And I like that you
it,
mentioned deleting just the drawing artwork, because
mhm, mhm.
in some cases we don't even need to delete the artwork, because if you have a bird that is almost similar to the magpie but it's just a bit bulkier, what you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
do is just even keep the same deformers and drawings and just reshape the deformer with changing the points, because then you can usually reuse a lot of that animation for
Yeah, I mean, I
some.
could maybe just do a recolor of this magpie. Like, let's use a
Yeah,
palette
that
and
too.
let's have fun with the palette for a second. Like, if I want to do a crow, maybe I'll redo the beak and just make everything black. Let's make everything
And
black.
this, my friend, is the difference between a real redress and a fake redress.
And I remove the eye, maybe, and the eye lines. And, like, I don't know, the beak, the nose bridge here. And now I got a crow
Yeah.
in 2 seconds. Like,
But
I would
that's a
do,
good
like, something
lesson
more
too.
like
Whenever we
push.
are
Maybe I'd put
in
it
shows and
bluer.
something, and if you have a scene that needs to have lots of secondary characters or like incidentals in the background, oftentimes you won't need to rig all of them. You can rig like two or three, and then if you make slight changes, like if you have a girl with a ponytail, maybe you can make it a short and a long ponytail, but it's going to be almost the same rig. And you can get so many variation by taking three rigs and changing the color of their clothes and maybe the
Oh,
shape of
yeah.
their hair a little bit. By changing a few details, you can start with 5 incidental characters and finish with 25 without an effort. So yeah, that's a very good tip.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Like, people underestimate all the people. Like, sure, maybe someone that's very like a big fan of the show will notice it, because they're, like, I don't know, they're really picky, and they play a bit of a uh, finding Waldo, like, oh, which character was a reuse in that show or whatever. But most of the people, they either won't
I don't
notice
care.
it or won't care. So yeah, you can, and again, I think it goes back to what you mentioned. Like, it's about not necessarily like saying no to everything, but choosing your battle, because the time you can save on those background character who are maybe running away is time that you can then put on making cool ninja kickflip uh
I think
epic
our word of wisdom we had
animation.
back then was like, if you fight against a decision, have a proposition to wait, I don't know how to say it in English, but like if you fight against a decision in the design or whatever, you should always come up with a solution for it. Just
Mm-hmm,
don't
mm-hmm.
just say like I don't want to do that, it takes too long. It's like no, like offer a solution. Like it's a teamwork.
Yeah. And like my job is not to like make the animator nor the designer pissed with me. I want to find somewhere like some middle ground
Balance.
in
You're like
which
the
both
avatar.
party are pleased. Again, like you said, I think it's something I like about rigging. Like there's something so satisfying with all that teamwork. I mean, it's what makes animation, right? Like something that really makes animation unique is how much people it takes to make something. Like anything you see on the big screen or small screen, even on your television, you're going to have at least a team of like at the very least like 40 people or so all
At
working to
least,
make it
yeah,
happen.
that's bare minimum.
Yeah, and that's a small team. We're talking like indie kind of stuff. Like it takes a lot of people to make animation happen. And I say animation, I'm including video games into this because
I
video
mean, they're made
games,
with animations, or you know.
yeah, they are animation, but I haven't worked enough to know like how much work goes in other aspect than animation, but I know it's a whole can of worm. Like it takes a village. Literally.
Yes.
But
Okay,
yeah.
and continue what you're doing right now, because I need to point it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because at Toon I teach a lot of classes, including
Mm-hmm.
cutout classes, and because I was gonna ask like what are some pitfalls of riggers and animators and stuff, and I think that shows one of the potential one, where a lot of people walk into cutout, being thinking that they can just do one pose, then make crazy changes to all the other parts of the drawing, and then make another pose, and then click on the interpolation button, and then have one pose become another. And I am here to tell you today this is not how it works.
Oh no.
um,
No, there's a lot of job. Like again, what's fun with cutout animation is it's mostly about, I think, the fact that once you have a puppet, you're not
what was
guaranteed, but
that?
you're pretty sure that you're going to have a solid and similar model between each pose. So it's more
Yeah,
about um, how do you
there's a
call
lot
it in
more
English?
fiddling and research you can do. Like when you have, like I see you with the pose now. Instead of trying to draw it right on the first go, like what I love about cutout and what I see you do here is you can just try a few things. Like oh, do I? It's like flipping between your drawings in a traditional animation, like when you would
Mhm.
flip drawing just to see like oh, does this move right? And then you just go back and forth between two poses, and you can play with one piece with a few pieces, and that's usually in terms of cutout animation, that's usually what we refer to as more of like the traditional animated method, where you kind of do one pose at a time. And this is very common in rigging, especially when you have characters like those that takes a lot of different poses. um, there's still a lot of frame by frame that goes into it. And
Oh yeah.
yep.
I mean, I think that's the difference between a great animator, a cutout animator, and like I'd say a junior is how
Mm-hmm.
much someone with a lot of experience in cutout, like the way they work. It's almost like they really do. They'll work on their keyframe breakdown, and then they'll in between. But they'll they'll break the puppet a lot, which is a good thing. Like
That's what it's meant to be. That's
yeah,
that's why
like
it's there.
they really push the boundaries of what the puppet can do. I think a really good example. The last show I've been working on, everything was bitmap. It's a really fun show. Like in term of technique, because basically the show is the bizarre story of Professor Zarby. And the way they did it is that everything was like photo bashing, even the character. So we ended up doing rigs, which every drawing was not really a drawing. It was like a Photoshop image. So it was a bitmap drawing. So the animator could not really redraw any pieces. Like what they
have
had
to
is
start with the puppet.
yeah. But because they had deformers and because they had like, great puppets, like we were working with a lot of, I would do, for example, I mean, I guess I can use this shadow as an example. Like I would do a vectorized shape and then I'll make a bitmap texture into it. And that's how they could like make fake perspective and like tweak their drawings, even though they couldn't like technically change them.
Smart.
And if you go watch the show on YouTube, because some of the episode on your YouTube, like you would not necessarily believe that it's all cutout animation, the way the puppets are sometimes stretched. Like one of the very good animator on this show was Gabriel Mallet, which, if I'm correct, is now working for Mercury as of this summer. But yeah, that guy would just, the thing he could do with the puppet was, it still blows me away. And that's something that I find fun with rigging.
Like, two very similar poses, like going from one similar poses to the other, like the two last poses you have. For this, you can totally use in betweening, like the how do we say interpolation, that would work, and it's great, and that's where it shines. It's like when you do hand-drawn animation, you need to redraw for your ease in and ease outs so much drawing that are closely together. Doing automatic in betweening for ease in and ease out, this is where cutout wins and in time, but not to do two completely different poses from one another.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute. I like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna remove the interpolation for now. I always work
with just for showing. Thank you for showing.
For people doing cutout and are not familiar with the preferences, stop motion keyframe will make it so your keyframe don't interpolate when you create them or move them. So if I move it there, no interpolation. And if I'd remove it and press OK, and now I move it, or maybe not. If I create it, if I create it, it interpolate automatically. I always work.
Instead of going to your preferences, you know what they added recently? Because
they added a button.
Yeah, I asked that for my birthday.
There is.
I got it. You just have to right-click on this.
Wait.
People ask me all the time, so it's good that it's on the video. People are going to know
one?
now. No, you have to right-click and hit customize on any of the buttons. Yeah, you go to customize, and then you can customize your timeline toolbar. So you can remove things that you never use.
I usually stop motion keyframe mode. Yeah. Nice.
Right? And then this is just a button to activate and deactivate the preference. And while you're here, if there's something you never use, you can also remove it from there.
You know what? Something I never do.
The quick eases, I never use them, so I would just remove them all the time.
I never use these. And I never... I'm gonna...
There you go. And it's going to make your toolbar a bit smaller.
Keyframe. I never use these. I always use the shortcuts.
Yep.
I also never use these. I always use a shortcut. Oh, that's so cool. That's something I love whenever I hang out with you. I learn so much. Like, it's something that's both like terrifying and like super motivating with cutout animation in general, is that the technology moves so fast and there's always something new being added to the program. So even like with all the years of experience that I now have, I always learn new stuff about the then limitation of harmony, which are no longer limitation after a while.
I mean, that's the downside of hanging around me too.
No, I disagree. That's the upside. I always learn so much. Like, I think maybe that's something I like also about rigging. It feels like you never get bored. Like, you always have something new to add to your arsenal. And that's something that always makes me super excited whenever I talk to you or another person, which if I remember correctly, was at last year 8th event, which is Colin.
Oh, no, not Colin.
Oh, I love talking with him. It's super...
I do too. Good friends.
Yeah. It's super interesting because, like, you'll have... Because like we said, there's so many ways to rig, and different project and even different animator will come on project with their own experience and their own preference. And maybe on the last show they worked, they were using a tool that you're not used to. And that then become part of what you know. Like one of the thing I found that the original rigger on Zarbi did was these little thing, which are basically 2-point constraint. I think if I remember correctly, the original rigger for this show was Marc-André Paquin, which is now also, he's also an animation supervisor, and he's
I add that
again
to
very
all my
good.
rigs because it's just so easy to make little bounce.
Yeah, and it's such a clever way, because I know from the documentation when I first saw the 2-point constraint, that's not exactly how they were, shown to be like useful for. But him and other animator, they decided to add these to their rig, and like I wouldn't live without them. I love them so much. Like they had so much life, and they had this little deformation that makes the drawing feels less stiff too.
Mm-hmm.
We started talking about rigging, and now I'm just like gushing about
That's
every
what we're here
rigging
for.
tips
And
that
speaking
I've
of
learned.
rigging, what are some common pitfalls of riggers?
You know what? I think it's going to be surprising, because I could be talking about bad techniques. But what I want to highlight mostly is how important it is to listen to your animator.
Yep.
And to always have like someone test your rig that's going to actually animate them. Because I'm the way I'm rigging now, I'm liking it because I'm doing it for me. But in a production context, you're rarely ever going to animate your rig, either because you don't really have the time, or that you're not the one using them in the end. So I think a common pitfall is that after a while, some rigger, they might they know how they like to animate because they know how to rig, so they will rig for themselves and not rig for their team, which is a bit like counterintuitive, because ultimately, even if I hate what I'm rigging in terms of animation and I wouldn't like to animate it, if the animator like it, like that's the way to go, because ultimately I'm working on a tool for them. So I think a common pitfall would be to not listen enough to your team. And I still listen. Sometimes animator will have requests that you just cannot do. Like there are limitations that comes with rigging. So it's very important to also be able to
and the real needs.
Yeah, but it's important to explain why it doesn't work. Sometimes it's about like, okay, you need to choose. You have A or B. You can have A and B at the same time. But it's still important to be there, because again, I'm also going to use this example. There's a bunch of things I would never have thought to include in rigs on which I've worked on if it were not animator that were like, oh yeah, I wish I could do that. Is there a way for me to do that? I'm like, oh, well, I've never really tried anything like that, but I can try. And then I try it, and I can either say, no, you can't, because it conflicts with something else. Or yes,
again,
you
this
can.
comes back
but
to something we've said countless times today in this interview. Communication is like the most important thing you can have, and actually you can work on, because I mean we both agree communication and social skills is not something you're only like born with.
Oh no.
It is a skill. Like
no, indeed, it's not something we were born with. It's very funny because
it's a skill. Like it's something you need to practice. And oftentimes we're gonna have people like that want to do rigging or want to do animation, and like, what are the skills I have to work on? Do I need to draw good? I'm like, yeah, you need to know how to hold a pen. But it seems that so many people forget that. They're like, the social skills are so important. Like you need to communicate with a team. And I think we both experienced it when you have like a team, like first of all, if you have animators that would sometimes be like angry and be like, oh, I hate these rigs, they're so bad, but like they never told anyone. So like they don't tell anyone, therefore the riggers keep rigging the same way they thought was good. Like I don't think anyone is in the industry to make everybody's life miserable. Like if you tell someone you really hate something, chances are they're going to try to change it, unless they're not a nice person or they don't have the
But
budget
like,
for it, which is okay. But like communication, people, we can
yeah,
find understanding ground.
yeah. That's a very good point. And I mean, again, from a, like I said, I animated for a while, so like I kind of know the animation struggles. But like we're all a team, and like you mentioned, it's soft skills are really a bit of underestimated, or underrated, I'd say, in the industry. Like being able to talk, being able to resolve conflict, being able to listen and like collaborate. Like so much, like animation is such a passion, a driven
Oh yeah, people are passionate.
work. Yeah, and people are passionate, and you pour your art into the project, you pour your art into your animation. So you've got a lot of very sensitive and emotional, even if they maybe don't realize it, people. So it's important to keep that in mind whenever you work on something, and also to like be, like you said, be able to communicate like your needs, your wants. um I'm losing track of things, but yeah, soft skills are sometimes, I think, more important than just being good at drawing. Like if I have a choice between someone who is okay at animating or pretty good at animating, but who is a terrible person to work with, and someone who's maybe a bit less good, but which I know I can communicate with if I have a problem or if I want something changed in their animation or their rig, I'm going with the nice person. I'm going with the person I can talk to, because so much of animation is about communication and teamwork. So yeah, if you want to know what to work on and you're feeling stuck, don't underestimate being nice to people, and also just to find your new job. Like so much of animation, like after your first gig, is about knowing someone who's already working
Yep.
in whichever studio you want to enter in. Like a lot of studio position don't even reach the stage where they'll be like online asking for people to apply. It's just going to be, hey,
Who do you know? Do you have any
yeah,
friends you can bring
someone
in?
who's,
You're nice. You must know nice people.
yeah, hey, we need a new animator. Do you know anybody who's free? Like it's going to be that first. Which can be a bit discouraging for newcomers, but it just shows the importance of don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like there are Discord channels where there are people that works in the industry.
yeah.
There are places, schools where you can meet people, and once you meet them, you keep you like don't disappear in the background. Like keep
I mean,
them in
I'll
your
be honest.
Facebook list or something.
I got my first job from a friend, and I
Mm-hmm.
have never had to look for another job again. They just came to me. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's yeah. So I mean, be nice and don't be fake and fix
And
your
just be nice,
attitude.
because animation is so hard. Like we already have so much to deal with when you're animating. Like it's
Yeah, can we not have drama, please?
yeah. And it's just everybody like on the show always wants to do the best, right? Like I always assume that people want to do their best because that's usually the case. So anything that can make the production easier, like it's invaluable.
And speaking of skills and rigging process and stuff, how do you keep up to date with said skills, like rigging skills or just soft skills and stuff? Let's start with rigging. For example, how do you keep up to date with your rigging skills?
By talking to you.
Well, that's an option.
I mean, I say that, but yeah, talking about rigging and animating to other rigger, but also animators. Like, again, I keep contact with a bunch of friends that are not working in the same studio that I am, or at least I try to. And, sometimes I ask them, hey, how's the project going? Is there something you liked about the show? Is there something you disliked about the show? I like
Are
theorizing
you
about
telling me you
rig.
listen to feedback? Oh my god. What a
Yeah, I
great
mean,
person you are.
oh, come on. But yeah, it comes back to what I say. Like, when you work, especially in rigging, you're not rigging for yourself. You're rigging for other people. In a way, the project we're working on of rigging our D&D character is like great practice because it allows me to do something that
Yep.
I'm not going to be the one using.
For the most part.
I mean, for the most part, like
You're using
this.
it right now. What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah, but
Is it
like
good?
this version, it's like the beta version. I'm hoping there's probably going to be more version after that that are going to change depending on feedback, and I'm probably going to learn a bunch of stuff from
Speaking of
what.
versions,
Hmm?
that's a big tip that I have. I mean, I don't know if maybe you won't, maybe people will not like it. But that's a give. That's a tip that I've been embracing for a few years.
Mhm.
When I rig, I always make my because it. One thing we do in studios is that when we're done with the rig, we template it and we give it to animators.
Mhm,
When
mhm,
I
mhm,
rig and I'm not sure about my recipe, I
mhm, mhm.
animate the scene directly in the like I make a save as of my rig and I animate directly in it. This way, if I see I forgot a pivot point or if a peg it might be better in another place, I change it as I go. Therefore, I
No,
don't have to do the animation, then come back to the rig and fix it, which is not
that's
something
very
you can do. Mm?
yeah, that's very interesting that you mentioned that because that's something we kind of did on our last project, the project I was talking about, Zarbi. A bit differently though, because on that show, what we had is basically we put between rigging and putting the template into the final scene, we would have an animator who would do just posing inside the rig,
Yeah.
and it would both you be used as a way to test the rig, make sure that there's nothing that slipped by, like a pivot point and stuff. And also, it will allow us to find a character's personality, have it done directly in the
Right.
rig. So the animator would start their scene, and there's already a bunch of expression, a bunch of poses that they can then use to start their animation. So they're never starting from scratch. And it's not something I had really seen done anywhere else, but it's, oh my God, it's been
I've seen it
such,
sparsely done because oftentimes the answer is we don't have time. But then if you don't have
honestly,
time to do that, your production is going to suffer down the road. It's
yeah,
100% sure.
because
Like I
think
haven't seen
about it,
one
the
production that
way,
didn't suffer from that.
like everything that we catch there, we don't have to correct it on 100 scenes. And honestly, I saw, like, personally, the difference in terms of quality of animation that this made, because then it would make it so that even junior would be starting off their scene with a pose. They wouldn't use it as is, but they would start at their scene with a pose that was done by a very talented senior. We had a bunch of different doing them, so I don't want to name all names because I'm scared I'll forget ones. But yeah, we ended up with a bunch of really, really good poses. And again, all that time that we would spend, like, sure, the rig might be closed, I don't know, a couple days afterward, what it would have been closed if we didn't have this step. But then all this time we spent on doing those poses, we would save that time in the end by having them done directly in the rig, and we would catch a bunch of, like, again, mistakes that we either wouldn't have catch, or sometimes it's not even mistake, it's just like, you know, things that we didn't think about that we needed. I mean, for this show, especially since everything was bitmap, if there was, I don't know, something that was not designed, usually that's where they would catch it. They would say,
Yeah.
hey, I need this character doing a backflip. We don't see his butt anywhere. I need a pose with his butt. Example. But yeah, that's something that was super helpful. I'm hoping I can convince other studio to do it because
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
it improved the animation so much, in my opinion. Like
Um,
it makes such a big difference. Yeah,
yeah, but that's what you
I'm
were doing
rambling.
at least. I think I saw because I thought the three dots at the end of your scene were your three rotation poses.
Oh yeah, they are. They're my little boop, my little wings actually. And I
Oh,
have it
it's so good. I
quickly.
love the animation.
I need to find my
Yo,
quick
we only
where did
have
I
5 minutes
put
left. Oh my god.
it?
So what I'm
Time
gonna ask
flies in
you.
good company.
Oh, you're right. Like it flew so fast. Um. Okay. So for the last couple words on this interview, I want to say that this bird is
Mhm.
amazing and you did a fantastic job. Pat yourself on the
Aw,
back because I can't because you're too far away. Too far away. And
thanks.
I do have a question for you. So, as artists,
Yeah.
we talked a little bit about it, but like, we tend to be sensitive people, and we tend to not have
Mhm.
the healthiest um, habits. But do you have any advice for artists that are going through, like sometimes we have like rough times either with our art or we're like, oh, like I'm feeling like I'm going like a burnout or something. Like, do you have any advice for people to try to prevent said situation or just alleviate it a little bit?
I think a good way to alleviate it would be to surround yourself with like-minded people. I think when we animate, especially the pandemic didn't really help in the overall feeling of maybe loneliness we tend to have because we're always like doing stuff on our own.
Depend how big
Um,
your Discord server is.
I mean, yeah, but like that's what I mean. Like
Mm-hmm.
finding that Discord server for me like was a bit of a lifeboat during the
Oh,
pandemic.
thank you.
It really helped me through tough time of just being able to talk about my stress, my troubles, uh, my fears with other people. It really helped in alleviate the feeling of maybe loneliness that I would feel from time to time. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, I would
finding just the
say
right people to casually talk to is a really big help. And
yeah,
also, if anyone is things they feel the need for it, like therapy is also a good thing. If you walk and
yeah.
you break your leg, you're probably gonna go get a doctor to fix it. If you feel like your brain is not going that well, you can get a therapist to fix it. Like, it's normal, and I think everybody should just like I think this should just be more widespread and normal. Therapy is
Hmm, hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, and it is scary. I get how scary these
Oh, it
things can
is.
be. Like vulnerability is oof. Especially like again in an industry which I believe a lot of people and kind of end up in often because they were used to be maybe a bit lonely at
Mm-hmm.
school, so they would occupy themselves by drawing and listening to cartoon and then reading. So it's maybe we didn't took the habits to reach out for numerous reasons. Uh, so yeah, it's important to learn once you're an adult that reaching out does help and finding your crew. Finding people you can trust in that are in similar situation than you is very important. It's something I'm very grateful. I'm gonna mention it for the shenanigan server you created because
Yeah,
like
yeah.
again really finding those people and like people you can trust and people you can collaborate with and just people like you can share your concern, it really is super helpful. So yeah,
All right. Can you
thanks.
show us the little animation a little bit, like
Oh yeah, I'm gonna
scrolling
make a
through
little
just before we
playback.
go?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
gonna
that's
you
so
know what
good. I
I'm
like
gonna
it.
put
Yeah.
this a bit longer. I want it to be longer.
But
That's something I like
that's
about
the good
cutout. I
thing of
can
working
just
with key poses instead of interpolation too soon. Now you can just move your key poses and check your timing.
yeah.
And then he flies away.
Yeah, that's the idea. He's gonna grab it and fly like the
Yeah,
rascal
well,
he
thank you so
is.
much for coming to this interview. Do you have any last things you want to share that I forgot or something? Where can we
Um,
find you?
you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Discord under the handle Doodledly, which is written right there. And you can find me on the
Or
Shenanigan server. I am there from time to time. I answer rigging question when I stumble upon them on time. And yeah, and you can also find me there nerding either about rigging or watercolor,
Or Dungeon and
which are my
Dragon.
two
Or the
obsessions
three
as
at
of
the same
late.
time.
Hmm?
I said or Dungeon and Dragon. Or all
Oh
three at the
yeah.
same time. And for those who don't know, the Shinani server is a Discord server that was created during the pandemic so that we can bring artists from all over the world together to talk and do art together and learn and grow and be friends. And if you want to join, we'll have a link in the chat of the chat box. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
So
thank you
thank you
again
so much
for
for
having
joining.
me.
It's always a pleasure.
We did it at the same time. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really is a honor to be here. And yeah, if you ever have rigging question, you can either ask them here or ask them on that server. I'm also sometimes on the Toon server, but mostly on the Shenanigan one.
Of course.
I guess on Twitter too. So
Yeah.
I'm a bit less active as of late.
I don't know why. All right. Well, thank you so much. And don't forget, everyone, we have a lot of other interviews available from the ATE. You can go check them out. We also have our YouTube channel. We have a Twitch channel. We have a cool website that you can check out, and everything will be linked in the chat somewhere in the screen. I don't know. Somewhere. And yeah, so have a lovely day, and see you again next time. Whoop, whoop.